Good morning, friends and family. This is Vicki from St. Augustine for Table Talk and His Creation. Right here from my table. I don't know if you can see, I've got some of my fall decorations out, and I have my fall cup. I'm ready for some cooler weather. I don't know about you guys, but of course, here in Florida, we have very little seasonal changes. So I'm just decorating because it's that time of year, and I always say if I put out my decorations, I'm claiming that which is not as though it were. So I'm claiming it's fall. It's fall, y'all. Seriously, I've come today to share about the woman at the well. And if you watched yesterday's His Creation live table talk in the Hollow in Georgia, you heard Shalina and Miss Sheila and Miss Rhonda speak on this very subject. It was a challenge. This was a specific study challenge that was given to us. And I have my Bible over here, and I have my notes in front of me. And I have to tell you that I read John chapter 4, the entire chapter, several times. But I really, for what stuck out and resonated with me was verse 5. Like, just right there at the very beginning of this story of the woman at the well and what happened after she encountered Jesus and what happened with her, with the other people who lived in her village. So I'm going to read John chapter 4, verse 5 to you, and then I'm going to go over my notes. And I'm going to tell you how what I was reading at the end of last week throughout the weekend, how it really came alive for me on Tuesday. So think about this. I started reading, I don't remember the exact day, but let's say it was Thursday evening or Friday morning. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I was reading, and Monday is when I finally put notes, like finished my notes. So I had like 4 days of thinking about the woman at the well, thinking about this story, reading it. And then something happened in my life that just rounded out the study, just brought it home for me, and made it clear to me why verse 5 was where I was drawn to. It was like a magnet, and I was drawn there. So let me read it to you. It says, this is the New King James Version, John 4, verse 5. So he came to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being wearied from his journey, sat thus by the well. It was about the 6th hour. If you don't know the rest of the story, or it's been a while since you've read that for yourself, heard it, I'm going to encourage you to go on back. I'm not going to read the entire chapter to you, or the entire parts of the chapter, the whole story of the woman at the well. Here's what was so important to me about verse 5. We know that Jesus is tired, and that he has come to the well, and he's decided it's time for me to sit. I'm going to sit. But he also knew that the Samaritan woman, this particular Samaritan woman, not just any woman, but this woman, was going to come about the 6th hour of the day. Now, if I'm doing my math correctly, it's putting it around noontime, the hottest part of the day, and after all the morning business of the many households in the little town or city has taken place, and some of that would be the routines of the young girls and women of each home coming to the well first thing in the morning to get fresh water for their homes. Okay, so keep that in mind. In my notes, I have going on to verse 6 and 7 that the woman at the well does show up. Okay, she does show up, obviously, because that's why we have the story, the woman at the well. And I wrote this down. Jesus met her, that woman, right where she was, in the middle of her filthy, immoral pit, at a place where no other person in her town, in her city, would be seen with her. They wouldn't go there at the same time as her. She was considered the trash of the town. But God, Jesus was there. He was there. A little further down, verses 8 through 10, that kind of stuck out to me. But then what I wrote was this, and this is what's so significant to me, going back to verse 5, that he sat by Jacob's well. See, the place where they met was the well. And if you look up the significance of a well in history, and even today, we if you think, as some of my teacher colleagues say to their class, think, you'll remember commercials and missions trips and organizations that go to third world countries to dig wells for villages. So here's the significance of a well. A well is a symbol of a thriving community. And then, so he sat right there. This was a thriving community. They had Jacob's well, a really good well with great fresh water. But then there's Jesus, who has the living water. He has life eternal to offer, more than just water to satisfy our physical thirst, but that life-giving water to satisfy our eternal soul, our souls that are immortal. Jesus told her that if she knew, she would ask him to give her a drink, because he is living water, and she would never thirst again, meaning that she would never need to go back to what her former life was. She lived in the town where no one would socialize with her, for she was the town prostitute. I mean, if you read the story, you find out that she even admits to Jesus. She offers up and says, I have no husband. And then Jesus that's the doorway for him to say, you spoke correctly. In fact, you've had 4 or 5 husbands, and the one that you're with now is not your husband. So she was that kind of woman. So keeping this in mind, that a well is the symbol of a thriving community. Jesus was sitting by the well in this city for this woman. He was presenting himself as a well that never runs dry, that's the well of spiritual water. You'll never be thirsty again, because when you drink this up, you will be filled up with his love, his mercy, his grace, his compassion. You won't be searching for that in the world. So that's kind of where I was sitting with this story by Monday evening. And then on Tuesday, I was reading and studying and listening to some songs and some online devotions. And this came to me. The challenge of one of my devotions was, do you look differently and think differently than the world? And then all of this just came, and I need to share it with you because it's significant to the story of the woman at the well. Luke chapter 6, verse 38 says, "Give and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over will be given to you." Live life like a game of hot potato. Pass Jesus on to the next person that you meet as you go out your day, and then pass it on to the next person, and pass him on to the next person, and to the next person, and to the next person, and it just keeps going. Because in Luke it tells us, when we give, he gives you more. When I give, he gives me more so that I can continue to give and give. And this is not just financially. This is in every way. Patience and long-suffering, that love and compassion, mercy and grace, all of those. His compassion, his love, and his mercy, he will give to you so that you can pass it on and on and on to each person that you encounter. And then this challenge was written down. I wrote this, and I just needed to share it. 1, you've got to run after Jesus. You've got to run after Jesus. Let his grace set you ablaze. And then live a life that is set on fire, meaning that you have such a fire within you that the light just shows, and you can't help but speak Jesus just by walking in the door. And then you start passing it out. You just start passing it out to each person that you meet, and he continues to give you more and filling you up, and he's keeping that fire within you stoked. But it's up to you as well, that there's that part on you that you have to keep that fire stoked. You have to be reading every day. You have to be worshiping every day. You have to be praising every day so that you can keep that fire stoked, and that you can look different than the world. But see, Jesus still sees you. He still sees you. Just like he saw the woman at the well. See, he saw me. He led me through my little study of the woman at the well. And he had me focusing on the fact that he was sitting there beside the well. He is a well from which we can partake each and every day. This was on Monday. On Tuesday, I received news. It wasn't necessarily horrific, horrible news, but it was going to be a challenge, and it still is something that is going to be a challenge to overcome. But I received that news, and then maybe an hour or so later, I received some more news. All of this while I'm at work. So I'm receiving this news while I'm at work, and then on my way home from work, after a day of work. And we all know that there are days at work that are great days. But then there are those days at work that are challenging, that are stressful. You're around other people who believe differently than you, people who go about their position and their job differently. And that's where I was Tuesday. Before I ever received any news, I had already spent half my day just in that challenging situation of having to deal with people who operate differently than I do, and having to pass on Jesus anyway through all of that. And in our flesh, that is just so hard. And for a person like me, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it with a smile on my face, and I'm going to do it because I want to, because of that fire within me, but it also drains me. So by Tuesday afternoon, by about 4 o'clock, I was toast. I was done. So much so that I came home, I spoke to my husband, I got a bath, got into pajamas. It must have been 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I was in pajamas and I was sitting on the couch. And from the kitchen, my husband says, "I see you took out hot dogs. What were you thinking of doing with the hot dogs?" And he says those words to me as he's coming out of the kitchen into the living room where I sat. And I looked up at him from my chair and I said, "I don't know." And I started to cry. I was crying because I had come to that wall and I had met the end of my rope. I was done. I cried over hot dogs, y'all. I was done, and I said, I cannot make another decision. I need to just sit here and I need to be quiet. I cannot make another decision. I have decision fatigue. I have a brain that has been overstimulated today. I just can't. And bless my husband, he's so good. He said, "Okay." And he walked away. And he fixed supper that night. And he cleaned up the kitchen that night. He did all the things. He was giving me Jesus. He was passing on Jesus. He was showing compassion. He was showing grace. And I was allowed to sit in my recliner, which became my Jacob's Well. I sat there in silence and in peace and quiet, not necessarily in peace with all that was going on. And I had peace about it. No one was hurt and it was all good. But of course, in my head, I'm trying to figure out how to fix it. And Jesus met me there. He met me there. And he met me there and he said, "I am here. You don't have to figure out anything. You don't have to keep this burden. You don't have to keep all of these burdens. Give them to me. I am here." He met me on my couch. He met me there, and he relieved me of the burden that I was carrying, just like he did for the woman at the well that I had read about for several days. He met me there, and he took care of that, and he lifted that burden from me, just like he did for the woman at the well. Because if you know the story, and a few verses from after meeting him, she runs off to tell everyone in the village, all the people that she didn't normally socialize with, to tell them, "Come here, come to the well, come meet this man, for he told me all the things that I've ever done." He knew her. He knew her. And she went out to pass on Jesus, to pass on to each and every person in each household, every person that she could find, that she could see, to the point that the whole town ended up there and had an encounter with Jesus Christ. That's what happened on my couch, y'all. And that's the Lord was preparing me Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday for my Tuesday. For my Tuesday couch sitting, being that woman. Being that woman. I needed Jesus. I needed him to come in. I needed him to assuage my stress, my anxiety, my fatigue. I needed him to take from my hands what I have been given through phone calls and through dealing with people at work all day. Just take from my hands those things that were weighing me down. and to give me fresh water, to give me a fresh dose of his love and his compassion and his mercy and his grace, so that on Wednesday I could get up running after Jesus. And when I say that, we know the Lord is not hiding from us, and he's not running away from us. When we say run after Jesus, it means you're racing. For me, it's racing to get to my little spot where I do my daily devotions. I'm racing to get dressed and put on some makeup and grab a cup of coffee and get out there to meet with him. So on Wednesday, I was ready. I was running after Jesus. I wanted to hear from him. I wanted his grace to set me ablaze again. I needed my fire stoked so that I could go out living my life like it was on fire and passing out more and more and more of Jesus. Friends, I hope that something that I've shared with you today has touched you or given you something to think about and encouraged you to maybe go back and read about the woman at the well, or to just sit for a moment like I did on Tuesday night with all the cares and the stress that you are currently holding on to, and that you sit with your hands open and meet Jesus there and let him take that from you, so that you can receive his love and his mercy and his grace and his compassion. And sit until you are filled up. Sit until he tells you, get up, it's time. So that you can go out and live that life that's set on fire and pass out Jesus everywhere you go, to everyone you meet. Just give him away, because Luke chapter 6 says, as you give, it's going to be given back to you. Remember today that you are loved. You are loved so greatly. A love that can only be compared to a mother's love for a child, yet it's even greater than that. You are loved. You are precious. Go out and live that life set on fire and love on someone else today. Until next time.